Thank you. Gracias, Monica. I'm going to have the other panelists come on up. Join me up here.
Go. Enjoy.
My strategy for this panel, come on up, everyone. Come on up and be seated. My strategy for this panel is to speak as little as humanly possible, because I've been told that I've overstayed my welcome.
That never happens.
That never happens. See, Chris, I've told I've overstayed my welcome in terms of number of words that I'm allowed in one day from one stage from earlier this morning, which I thoroughly enjoyed, by the way. So to do that, I'm going to turn it over immediately to our panelists. And what I'm going to ask them is to introduce themselves, give us their title, tell us a little bit about their company. More than just name and more than just sort of a general, but take a few minutes and tell us what it is uniquely that you do, your company does, and what it does for advertisers. And we're going to let's start with Brittany.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you. That was a tough act to follow and a tough spot right before cocktails. So thank you for hosting us and for your attention. So Brittany Slattery, I am head of marketing and sit on the executive team of OpenAP, which if you are not familiar, it is an advanced advertising company that's owned by Fox, Viacom, NBC Universal. And our role in the ecosystem is really helping bring simplicity and scale to audience-based campaigns and television.
Terrific. Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Bizzarro, and to follow along Bruce's path, our job at Canoe is to get our clients, help them get them promoted. That's basically what we do, make our clients look good. We do that via enabling premium video advertising. So specifically, we enable video on demand advertising and advanced advertising. So if you're in, let's say here in Miami, you have Comcast, you go watch video on demand, you go to Fox, you do The Masked Singer, an ad plays out, that's going through our ecosystem.
Hi, Dave Morgan. I'm the founder and CEO of Simul Media, and we've been working for the last 11 years to bring a digital approach to TV advertising, and specifically, we've built an end-to-end closed-loop platform to help advertisers better target, optimize, and attribute their campaigns across all of the major national TV networks in the U.S.
Patrick.
Hi, my name is Patrick Casal. I'm from Xandr. I'm Senior Director for Latin America. Xandr is an AT&T company that is focusing on building products to create a marketplace for digital and television convergence. So that's why we're here. And I also wanted to say, I know this conference is about kind of premium video, and I just want to say, congratulations to LAMAC, because the content today was phenomenal. It's, Brittany said, it's really hard to be the last act here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And as far as I know, none of us will be playing instruments as Bruce did.
Yes.
And by the way, if you listen to the Sonny Boy Williamson rendition, you could hear the roots of Led Zeppelin's Livin' Lovin' Mate. That's how well he played it, by the way. All right, so a little bit of a challenge. Let's start with this term, advanced advertising. Unfortunately, you can still run into different people in our ecosystem. And it's not just based on geography, and it's not just based on experience. People who are insiders in our business who are going to give you a different definition of advanced advertising. I think I'm going to start with Dave. And here's where you're at. Let's say you're at a conference. It's titled Advanced Advertising. You just got in an elevator with a marketer that you know, and she turns to you and says, and you just need to answer it in marketing terms that she's going to understand. You have less than 30 seconds. And she says, Dave, what's advanced advertising? Go.
Advanced advertising is bringing data science and software to what has otherwise been known as old-fashioned linear TV to automate it more, to make it more addressable, to deliver on an audience basis, to attribute the actual results to it. It's basically to leverage all of the things that have been built in the digital ad ecosystem to bring it to make the TV advertising much more powerful than it's ever been.
It's above 30 seconds, but it was really good. Does anybody want to add anything to that? If you're in the elevator ride, Brittany, go.
I would add, to simplify, advanced advertising is transforming the way that people experience ads. And that's really where we're trying to lean into the ecosystem to connect with people in a real way and to make advertising engaging again and relevant to them.
Oh, wait, terrific. Chris, Patrick, anything?
I would add on the immediacy of the data turnaround, because in TV, we've always had MRI, we've had Simmons, right? We've taken that they're an auto enthusiast, but that data might have been 6 months old. They were in the data for auto, right? Now we can get that in a matter of days and turn that around within a matter of hours and affect a media plan. So I think it's the immediacy of the data.
Let's go with that. And Patrick, let's talk about that idea of evolution. So what's evolved if we're giving a definition to advanced advertising? How, sort of truth and description, what's changed now that changes that elevator ride versus, say, just a few years ago or maybe in a few months ago?
Yeah, so my background is actually coming from the AppNexus acquisition. So I've really focused on digital advertising first and not so much television. I'm kind of entering television now. And what I see is it's very scary how far away we are from what we could be doing. And so, when we talk in digital advertising, we really do know with a lot more precision and a lot more accuracy, and we're not really focusing on like sample data to make kind of informed decisions. And then when I think about the scale of TV advertising, we're talking about billions of dollars that it's based on just a handful of panel sampling. For me, it's too hard to compute there.
Yeah, I actually have to challenge that a little bit because I started in online advertising in 1992. So I'm not a TV Luddite, right. In that I think that what's changed is it didn't go away. And I think a lot of people thought 10, 15 years ago that TV was going to go away, that it would be replaced with this notion of something that was 100% digital. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've now seen a real movement around the advanced TV advertising, and that TV is going to be here for a long time. We can do it better. And so my point of disagreement is just that I think that we have a ton of faux precision in digital. I mean, we have a ton of data that actually is pretty meaningless. If you look at the number of data points that are actually used, that actually have a real kernel in a real behavior, it's probably less than 1 or 2% of all of the data used for targeting. Yeah, our panel sucks. I mean, it's way too small, but we can do a lot of things with panels and other things that I think we can now start doing better. So it's not one or the other. I think it's the digital approaches to TV. It is a little weird. I've only been in TV 11 years, which still makes me a newbie. Yeah. But I think that's what's happened is we've recognized it's really powerful. It's not going away, but we have a lot of great digital technologies and techniques which we can now mix into it.
It's really interesting. At one point, I was going around and talking to a lot of candidate advertisers and political advertisers. And you'd come in and you're representing all the television networks and distribution. Their first question, tell me about your data. This isn't last year. This is 6 years ago. The thirst has been there for a long time. And I want to talk about, and by the way, I love that you guys have two different points of view because frankly, too much agreement ruins a good chat. And we're going to have a good chat. So one of the things I wanted to kind of get at was, we're migrating, or at least the press tells us, and on conferences, daises, we're being told that we're migrating away from something called, age, sex, demographic targeting, which is basically panel-based targeting, and we're doing audience-based buying. And I'm going to start let's start with a definition. When someone talks to you, Brittany, and they say, are you in the audience-based buying business? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I say that we're able to now target based on your preferences beyond those age and gender. So now if I'm Toyota, right, and if I want to target someone who's in the market for an SUV, because we know that SUVs in Miami are popular, I learned today, I can now target them based on their unique preferences, based on household income and so forth. So it's really transforming and really being able to target on a more granular level across screens, across platforms and television the way that digital has for years.
Okay, Chris, mechanically, when we're moving away and we now have a data-informed, infusion from multiple points to do audience-based buying, what do you need? I mean, what are the data sets? How do you get this done in terms of, and getting away from something that's panel-based, but getting into something that's got some real precision?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for everyone here, right, there's some great reputable vendors that have data sets, and sometimes big companies buy them and absorb them into the field. So I think there's a lot of safe, secure places for an enabler like us. It's about how does that data get from point A, like through that whole ecosystem, right? So from when you all do a campaign and it plays out on television and comes back into your reporting systems. For us, it's about how do you do that in a safe, secure manner so that we don't actually have a lot of those issues that are on the digital side. Because TV, while there's a lot of knocks against it, and sometimes it's old and it's stodgy and all these sorts of things, one thing it is we all know, it's very safe, secure, and reliable. So for us, it's that challenge of how do you do all these new wonderful things, do it at scale, yet do it in a safe, secure manner.
And if I can add, the challenge that we've heard so many times from advertisers is that it's hard to buy on TV, right? Like you go to an NBC Universal, you go to a Fox, you go to a Viacom, and the audience that you're asking for looks differently at each of those publishers. So we saw an inflection point a couple years ago where each of these networks were investing in their own data science capabilities, predictive audiences, right, to be able to see where that auto intender was going to be. But there were no standards, and there was no consistency on the simple mechanics of what does the audience look like, how are we defining day parts, and so that for us is where we've played a big role in defining this category, this what is becoming a buzzword of audience-based buying, but how do we create some standards to it, and then use data, both first party and third party, to help our clients and brands and advertisers activate across platforms.
Go ahead.
If I could just add, I think that's an important piece that there needs to be standards. I think the industry is asking for it, but we need to also be cognizant of where the puck is moving, right? Like Wayne Gretzky's thing about he knew where the puck needed to go, or if you're in Latin American context, Messi knows exactly where the player is going to be to receive the pass. We need to understand where consumers are going to be, and it's going to be a continual fragmentation, and they're going to be watching things across multiple devices and multiple channels. And so we really have to understand from this audience-based buying how to deduplicate those users so that you know that you've hit someone in a linear perspective and on a digital perspective, and you can make sure you do frequency management on that. And the point on data is you have to trust that source of data to the point where you can actually say with confidence, deterministically, this is a real user across multiple areas.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Dave a quick question. You talked about your 11-year journey. Tell it to me from a data perspective. Tell me what the trajectory has been like about your experience with your company.
Yeah, so we started Simul Media the way you would do a start a digital company, which is focusing on viewer data, user data. So a core to the problem in television is that the samples that are used all across the world are way too small. And tend to be too concentrated in some places. And so the United States, the Nielsen panel, is about 30,000, 32,000 households. That means that about 80% of the TV viewing occurs on spots where the projection is statistically insignificant. The error rate is too high. So that's why you have to sell in bulk. So the first thing we did was starting to license a lot of set-top box data. We've at this point have licensed everybody's data at least once, and some 2 or 3 different times. And so it's not then about throwing out the concept of panel. It's actually having a much bigger, much more predictive one that you can actually be very deterministic in what you're projecting. And so we now have data on how 35 million people watch their television every second, and it's all different and it's all balanced from 18 different suppliers. So it's finding diversity of data. At one point we had 70 million viewers. That was way too many. So we found, and then it was, as some have said, it's being able to tie in those first-party data sets, and then recognizing that some data sets have horrible statistical stability. The MRI data set has, it changes every single time they reissue that survey, which anyone that does it in-state match sees. But I think if I wanted to go to what Bruce said earlier in the last session, it was actually getting away from all the functionality and trying to sell data and features, and then moving up a level to the benefits, which is people are looking for better, cheaper, more effective advertising, and then going one more level and looking at the human motivations. And at the end of the day, they want to be able to, they want to get back to the days of, 3 drinks, three phone calls in the morning, 3 drinks over lunch, and a 3 o'clock train back to New Canaan if you're in New York. And a return to the simple life. And it's really about how can we solve the problem faster and simpler.
Chris, let me ask you a similar question. You came into Canoe at a real inflection point. You were essentially, handed a set of assets, and I think you were basically given a pencil and a phone and an office. And you've built an incredible business. Can you take us through the role of data, what it is that you've been able to provide for clients, and a little bit of your trajectory and experience as well in this entire ecosystem, because I'm one of those people who got to see you from day one, and take it from there. Tell us what happened.
I mean, I think a lot of it is, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, that there's so many choices and all that, right? And we did boil it down to just that simplicity, kind of what you spoke about on the first panel, this morning. I'm just breaking it down to simplicity. And for us, the first thing was, how do you take an underperforming asset and make it a performing asset? So for VOD, a lot of the programmers were just giving their VOD content to the cable operators and just kind of walking away, because they were just like, oh, well, it was a term of their agreement, and they just said, do this. Just kind of looked at that and said, well, that's kind of stupid. And in the matter of the 8 years, we've turned it into a $1.4 billion marketplace here in the States. We managed to do that by, starting from that. And while it could be a whole bunch of confusion and, just been a mess, we really just focused on making it a performing asset and really boiled it down to what did the marketer need in order to transact business, right? So when you say data, big data, we say, well, what's the first thing you really need? Well, you need a viewed ad impression, right? That's what we need to transact the business on. A buyer needs to say, I need to buy 1 million impressions, and the seller needs to give them 1 million impressions. Okay, so let's make that easy. Let's make the data around that easy to transact on. And then try to make the underlying technology easy to deliver that on. So in a way, it's really kind of stupid. But the fact is, instead of watching the Coke ad on the Masked Singer in linear, if the consumer chose to watch it on VOD, then we just said, you know what? It is the same as linear until it isn't, right? And just use that simplicity to it. So try to keep the business rules, try to keep the transactions so much that it is familiar to folks and what they're comfortable with, and only change those things in the process that you need to change for that instance. So those really the guiding principles around it. And I think that's transferable to a lot of other things when folks have so many choices, so many things in the course of the day, to kind of just focus on what do I really just need to do to transact a business, while different, but in a simple form. That's how it worked.
Brittany, you're the one who might have the shortest tenure at their current position.
Yep.
You want to tell us how long you've been at OpenAP?
Sure. I joined officially on October 1 full-time, so that is, a month and a half now. Was consulting with them since June. Was at ComScore before that, though.
So when a friend in the business says, so you started consulting, what got you to jump into OpenAP full-time? What did you see once you were in? What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I've gotten that a lot. I think we're really at an inflection point for advanced television. I think there have been so many promises that have been made to advertisers, by publishers, by data technologists, and so many different solutions. But I feel like we're now at a precipice and at a point to where we can actually target and really reach consumers in a really powerful way based on a diverse data set, right? And so that, for me, is exciting. I feel like it's evolving and it's changing so much, and it will continue to. My hope, that said, is that we continue to focus on the things that matter. You asked the question in the prep on where is our hope for where advanced advertising is going next, so if I may jump there.
Yes.
There is a late American author, Alvin Topher, who said, future shock is the concentration and the stress that happens when too much change happens at once. And that change isn't going away in our industry. We're seeing so much consolidation in the media ecosystem. We've got in the US, in California, we've got CCPA coming up in January that we're planning for. But what hasn't changed is that we're trying to reach people at the end of the day. And in the US specifically, that is a very diverse audience. It's continuing to be more multicultural than ever before. And so what I'm excited about and why I'm jazzed up about being here is that now we can go back to what was so true and core about advertising, and that's influencing culture, but getting our messages into the hands of the people that want to hear it and will act on it.
Go ahead,
John,
Dave.
I want to add something, because it's something you said this morning that I don't know that it was people understood the significance of it. You talked about television networks possessing so much data and their knowledge in the tune-in category.
Right.
That was one thing I should have mentioned in the journey. The first customer set we started serving were television networks as advertisers on other networks and on the operators. And what's great there is the set-top box data, or the viewing data, whether it's off the screen or the box, is both predictive viewing, so where can I find someone in the future, but it's also their purchase data. It's did they watch? And so that's actually what really, I think, was one of the first genesis of a lot of the closed loop that we're all seeing now. And that was the audience basis. It was no longer just a persona. It was, I want people that like this show. I'll find lookalikes that like the show, but then I'll just let the system train itself. And I think the television networks were the first category of marketers to really become data-driven, attribution-driven. And I think what's exciting now, it's also really driving things, are we have a whole new category of TV companies focused on app download, usage, subscription, and we're using all of those same techniques now, whether it's anything from Netflix to Amazon to CBS All Access, all of those products.
And by the way, those products, those apps, those streaming services, is 300 million in advertising on TV. This gets us right to you when we're talking about the technology and the data that's inside of the distribution footprint and knowing the viewer. You throw on top of that, the subscription and all that kind of information. Now, a smart company might go out and acquire content, maybe world-class content. And so in comes Turner. Talk to me about that triangle and what you can do now that, as a company, should get marketers excited. It was a smart thing to do. Why?
Yeah, I think it's to take it one step above, and I'll come back to your question. I think it really comes to this kind of question about this ecosystem that we're trying to build, and that we kind of see it's not working as intended, right? Advertisers want better, more targeted messaging and a better feedback loop on what's going on. Marketers need to understand where their audiences are going and keep up to date with kind of the way consumers are wanting to consume. And us as users, we need to have a better experience, because right now, it's not that we don't like ads. Today, the ads that they showed were fantastic. One of them particularly kind of hit home for me. But the thing for me about it is we are inundated with a lack of kind of ability to understand how we're consuming content, and that's actually creating us to do things like ad blocking in a digital perspective, or workarounds, or even just signing up for subscription services to not have ads. And it's going to get to a point where that's not economically feasible for us. Like, we can't have a subscription for everything, because then we'll be paying more than our cord cutting, what we thought was the reason we were cutting cords in the first place. So we need to fix for each one of those groups. And I think what Xandr is really about is creating a platform that does that. And you can only do that when you have the insights of marketers and you build knowing what they're looking for. You can only do that when you have content, not just your own, but also third-party content, because let's be honest, like, if it doesn't work across the board, then it's not going to scale. So it has to be something that works for Warner as it would for any one of our third parties that are part of it. And then the consumers, they have to really actually say, this ad is relevant, I'm engaging with this is something that I actually am learning something. And one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of kind of what we've done in Latin America is that we've really extended, for inventory that can't be sold on a digital perspective. We give that as a charity to organizations who can kind of get their message out there and help kind of local communities. And that kind of stuff is really important for them, because that's free advertising, but it's also educational and a way for them to drive donations. So advertising is more than just selling. Advertising is about connecting, and I loved our comments earlier today with other panelists. It's a lot about the heart as well. And so, a company like AT&T, they have to go from being a 100-year-old telephone company to a modern media company. And the way they do that is by acquiring and partnering and then thinking about the end users. And so a lot of the things we said today in the panel, I agree with. I'm not arguing, but I think the approach in which we do it is going to be. I mean, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. And I do think there's going to be ways that drive better results for that ecosystem.
Okay, I'm going to bring a three-letter acronym into the conversation, and we're going to get back into that elevator with our favorite client, and she's going to turn to us, and I'll start with Dave. You started this conversation with her, and she's going to say, do I get better ROI? Tell me about ROI. I mean, is that the reason I'm doing advanced? I mean, that's the promise of data and precision, right? Talk to me about ROI.
I think a lot of advertisers are embracing advanced TV advertising because they can see a return on investment that is more consistent with what they see in Facebook or Google, and that they have attribution in tighter windows. So they can associate the delivery of an ad with an action, whether that's in a 24-hour window or a 28-day window. I think a lot of times, though, that's also a bit of a faux promise, because I think the biggest reason that people are using advertising, TV advertising particularly, is that actually it tends to be so big that you can see it in the cash register.
Exactly. Scale.
And so I think sometimes the ROI is, how do I give something to my boss that justifies what I believe and I know in my core business anyway, but I'm getting beaten up because the Facebook have like embedded a couple social experts in the office, and they're the bright shiny object right now.
Okay. Will we continue to see a demarcation inside of a communication plan that's got a line that says, multi-screen TV and a line that says advanced advertising? Or do we think that one set of principles is going to become the guiding light for the larger ecosystem? Brittany?
I think we're there. And I would say consumers don't think of content by channel, right? They think of content in general. They're not saying, okay, I'm going to go watch This Is Us on my set-top box, and then I'm going to go and view the next episode on the treadmill as I'm running on my iPad, right? So we need to stop looking at it that way. And with advancements in technology this year, I think we're there. And anecdotally, I'll share with OpenAP in October of this year, right as I was joining, we launched a brand new marketplace, evolving from the 1.0 that was just standardizing those audiences and the mechanics, as I mentioned, to launching a marketplace where buyers can go, they can define their audience once, they can plan across digital and linear, and they can go execute that campaign and see forecast of their results before they actually buy it, to be able to see, okay, I am getting ROI, I might need to shift budget here and there. And so that's new. We're just bringing it to market now, but I think, to my point on the rapid pace of change, I think we're there. It's just getting the adoption and education out to the marketplace on how we're simplifying the process.
And Chris, in terms of that idea, the idea that precision, census-based, and the ability to really custom message, is that really taking over the psyche of the greater marketplace? I mean, we talked about Nielsen panel data before, and my reality is I don't even hear it come up till the very end of the process, when someone says, as the largest common denominator, this was essentially what we delivered. Is that your experience as well?
From the folks we work with, I think the media plan absolutely is your media mix, right? There's people buy TV for reach, and you absolutely buy TV for reach, and that will never change, right? So the scale is of utmost importance. But absolutely, we now see people saying, okay, well, I want to double down, right? Basically just like you still today double down maybe in geography, right? I have a national campaign, but I'm going to buy local because I want to double down in Miami and New York and whatever. I have some theater, release. Now it's that folks can double down on, I do just want to reach those bike riders, or I do just want to reach left-handed tennis players, or whatever that may be. So that's what I'm seeing is that mix. And when you put that in also into the math, your eCPM starts to work out, because there can be, after you pay clowns like me and a few others in this new ecosystem, that costs money, and sometimes to your procurement officer, that might be a lot more money in his eyes. But when you do, you work with folks like Simul or with Xander, and you actually go through a campaign, the eCPM that comes back for the effectiveness, and when you mix that in with your ultimate media plan and the reach, then the math works. But I think a lot of folks get scared off, right? Just by, oh, well, that's really expensive and I'm going to stay away from it. But you need to look at it holistically.
Yeah, I think a critical thing that we have to, all of us that work in the market, you have to put out on the table here, as far as will we see the budgets come together and become holistic. There isn't any, first, television by and large in the United States and in most of the Latin American markets is almost, 90+ % on a national basis is bought through agencies. And so they are not organized to have the same person, no matter what anybody says, to have the exact same person buying out of the same metric, buying something in digital video, something in over the top, something in national broadcast, something in national cable, something in local broadcast, local cable. They're different people. They're typically different companies, different entities, and they don't like each other. So I think
they're competing for the same budget.
Exactly, they're all competing for the same budget. So I think that's where we're going to continue to see what's advanced. Now, if someone can put a TV label on what's over the top, then the digital person gets to buy some TV. And now the TV with the C3 or the C7 or the C-Flight can add in some digital into the TV. But this is just a fight for power and control on either the sell side or the buy side. I think that what we're going to see, and I think a lot of the stuff you're doing at the VAB and raising this up is we have all these digital-born companies that are now buying much more directly. They're not working through classic agencies. They are data-driven. They know TV works. And they're changing the way they buy. And they're buying directly a lot of times from the sellers now. And that, I think, is where we're going to see the transformation. And that's where they're actually going to look at a common set of metric, and they will come back in. I never would have worked in the 30-second elevator, but back to the ROI.
I just want to, I wouldn't argue what you're saying is true probably in the United States, but in Latin America, I disagree. I think Latin America is a very, very different environment, and we look to the United States and we look to Europe as an example, but we also have a very different point of view. And it's not as fragmented. It's much more consolidated. So the media players are usually the biggest fish in the room, so to speak. And I believe agencies are under tremendous pressure to actually consolidate the way in which they buy. So I do think that you are talking to the same people more and more when you go into those rooms. And I do think that they're looking for consolidated tools to do their buying across digital, OTT, CTV, and linear.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I've done lots of business all through Latin America. I met my wife, basically in selling ad tech in OAS, which is now part of your business. In Mexico City. But fundamentally, they're still coming off of two different spreadsheets. And Reforma is still the page, or Televisa is the ad, and what you're going to get from I don't even think, is it still called esmas.com or .com? But is coming out of a different budget and is sitting in a different place and is measured differently on a different diary. It's it's with a different metric on it. And so, not a question. Smaller teams, more focus, much more concentration. You can do things more holistically. But I think the place when the sellers really come together, and I guess the opportunity for LAMAC, when the sellers can come together and bring it together in an integrated way, much like OpenAP, you actually can move it forward in a combined product.
Let's pivot the discussion, because I think this is a very important place that we're headed. Now, the elevator is stuck now. So now you're going to have a lengthier conversation with your friend who's a marketer. And she tells you that you didn't know that she just took this enormous marketing job in Latin America, okay? And she's just going to ask you a simple question, which is, and you don't have to be an expert per se on Latin American media, that type of thing, but she's asking you a question about folding the map from your experience, and that is this. She's going to say, everything that you've learned through your companies and your experience and your careers in the United States, having to do with, let's call it advanced advertising, how can you save us time? What can we learn from you that we don't have to learn the hard way? And anyone can take this.
I think it's essential to deliver performance metrics from the beginning. I think that TV can't win anymore just because it's the big position is the jefe. I mean, it has to prove its way. And I think that Facebook and Google have grown much, much faster in the Latin American markets than they have any other place in the world. And I think it is entirely because the TV market has undersold itself and undermeasured itself, and with poor metrics at the top and no metrics at the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, from a newspaper perspective,
What's that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we used to have these papers and get their hands dirty. It was weird. But we basically, we lost that battle, that digital transformation. And newspapers now are basically, have to live in a world that was created and controlled by Facebook and Google. And I think television, as it's going through that same digital transformation, especially in Latin America, which has historically, television is key. I mean, like football, telenovelas, and just your basic kind of, you're watching whatever you watch on TV. That's very much part of your society as a family, and then as kind of creating that bond. And so now we see that Facebook and Google, they have this dominance in there, but they haven't necessarily cracked the code on how to kind of connect the pipes, so to speak, across the great content that members of LAMAC and others have. And so they want to come in there. They see the opportunity to go in there. They see that's where the future is. But I think in Latin America specifically, since we're in kind of LAMAC conference, I think we have to actually say, no, we're not going to let you bully us like you did in the newspaper digital transformation. And that's going to be a very hard thing, because a lot of the budgets they receive today are coming from Google and Facebook, either as direct marketers or they control the purse strings. And so it's going to be hard to say, no, for the greater good of our ecosystem, we're not going to let you define the rules.
But to that, I would say one thing we've learned is that gone are the days, we're all competing for time and attention. We're all competing for eyeballs, right? But the real competitor here are the walled gardens. They are the Facebook, the ad-free environment. So rather than pitting against each other, coming together, right? Creating that partnership, that collaboration, I believe, and that's what we're starting to learn and see real actual results in test cases in the US, that we're stronger when we come together and collaborate to really move the ball down the field.
Yeah, just one point there.
Yeah.
Coming together is great,
Yeah.
but it doesn't work all the time. And again,
Yeah.
going back to the newspapers, they've failed in Latin America.
Yeah.
So, they tried to come together in Argentina. They've tried a coalition in Mexico for like a quick month, and it fell apart. Like the coming together is really hard when you've historically been rivals and you don't have the ability to go head to head on a technology perspective and a data perspective, and that's hard.
Right. It is.
So the GDA didn't make it.
RPA, GDA, all of those failed dramatically.
So I'm going to combine both those conversations, and that is, you can't forget about scale, because that's what TV is, right? So to that Latin America person who just got that budget, yay. Don't forget about scale, because it all has to happen in scale from TV. But in order to get scale, you need to collaborate. And it's this was, I'm not quite sure when the people named Canoe, it was sort of a joke, but it was the idea of everyone's in the canoe together.
Yeah.
It took 12 years for us actually to get there in the States and get that kind of
And then they handed you the one paddle.
yeah, right. I had the one pound. It took 12 years, but we really do have Comcast, Cox, Charter, and as of a couple weeks ago, Frontier, so 4 cable operators, 23 programming groups, which equal 120 networks, that are literally working together. Again, the key to that was to keep the product simple, so that yes, you're in your frenemies and you're in everyone's business and there's a million reasons not to and all that sort of stuff. But if you kind of go, okay, here's it, here's what we're chasing, then it's absolutely possible. I mean, to the point of that. So don't forget scale, and it is possible to work together to fend off the enemy.
And it is hard. I will agree with that.
No doubt. Both from a business and technological point of view, but it can be done if you keep the goal simple and keep the chores simple.
Keep your eye on who our clients are, what they're asking for, and what their end consumer is, right? Like, we are in the business to service advertisers who at the end of the day are in the business to service their consumers who are engaging with our content. So we can't lose sight of that, right? Like, it's all inside baseball. We can be frenemies. We can have many paddles in the canoe, if you will, but we need to make sure that we're focusing on the end consumer and what they're asking for.
All right, I'm gonna ask a practical question you've probably been confronted with. You can insert the name of your company, your technology, or say Advanced Advertising, or the functionality of what you do, and then client's gonna say those words. They're going to say Simulmedia. They're going to say OpenAP. They're going to say Xandr, right? They're going to say Canoe. And then they're going to say that awful word after, trial. Trial. Advanced advertising. I want to try this. I want to test this. What do you say to a world-class marketer who comes to your company and says, well, we've got a budget for trial. Dave?
You have to say yes. I think we learned in the digital systems that you have to be able to build platforms in such a way that you can let people test, learn, optimize. I think that's a lot of the way marketers are attacking things today. Gone will be the days. This would be another thing I would try to find a way to squeeze into the elevator pitch about folding the map.
Elevator's stuck now.
I know.
Yeah, because you're doing so well.
Which is, you don't have a choice anymore now. That's what companies expect. That's what they can get from Facebook and Google. So for us, one of the things we did at Simulmedia was we created a platform, D2CX.com, and we made it so that, A, they could come in an automated way. They could start with small budgets on TV. You have to be able to give them the capacity to watch the ads hit in real time and see and track it to a pixel or something in their mobile app so that they actually can come in and say, I mean, in the US, it's very hard to imagine a $40,000 national budget. But you can actually distribute that across 10 networks and get with real precision and see a little bit of movement. If they can see a little bit of movement, and then it's, fortunately the way TV works, they don't like to test very small for long.
Right.
Then the next budget's $500,000, and then the next budget's $2 million. But we have to. That's, TV has to play the digital game that way. The idea of, we're going to do this stuff, and I'm going to run the campaign. It's going to be a 6-week campaign. You can't even think of talking to me with less than $3 million in that time period. And I'm thinking about maybe giving you some post logs 8 weeks after the 2.5-month campaign. That ain't going to work.
Right. Now, the one thing I want to ask though is, does that, and I think you're right on in that we need to engage as they want us to engage, and frankly, as others are able to engage athletically in this marketplace. I think that's absolutely right. Somebody might look at that conversation and that transaction among intelligent people and say, aren't you though running the risk of having this be just a pure lower funnel transactional measured media when we've got sight, sound, motion, scale, and we work so well at brand building, brand loyalty, profitability, all these upper funnel functions. So what do you say? How do you balance that?
Yeah, well, sometimes you need to win on the bottom of the funnel to shift the budget and to get the attention where you need to be. I don't think we have a problem as an industry being able to sell the value of the up part of it, if we're smart, but we've undersold the bottom of the funnel part of it, and we've let the others win the attribution battle. And I think you have to be really confident in your product. You have to be confident walking into a test. You have to recognize that, hey, you're actually going to prove a positive return on investment on a bottom of the funnel metric for short-term sales. And by the way, 3-month, all this research shows that 3 months is going to be 3x what the first 3 days were.
And now which goes to setting, just to follow up on that, which goes to setting clear and realistic goals, right? I want someone to come in and kind of set what their expectation is. And back to, I want to get my clients promoted. That's my job. And in order to do that, set clear and realistic goals that we can all achieve and drive to together, rather than just come in and go, it's 3 months, whatever millions of dollars, and we just go, okay, great, whatever you say. I think you need to have that real conversation up front and set those realistic goals.
Patrick, would you be willing to start with a conversation that says just what Dave was talking about, is that I'll bet on the lower funnel attributes in terms of Xander's capabilities to deliver over some reasonable continuum for the larger benefit of a larger budget over time, and we'll work those upper funnel attributes. Is that a bet you take?
Yeah, I would take that, because I think, I agree, we need to show value on the kind of lower funnel and then kind of make our way up, but also because you need to have confidence in your product and your data. And so I would say, and Chris said scale is really important. If you have the scale, like if you have access to 40% of the addressable TV marketplace, I'm going to be able to find those users that really make the difference in terms of your attribution. And if you have the data to be able to then put them all together and show the advertiser in not 8 weeks time frame and not real time like you have in digital, but much faster turnaround feedback loop, that's great. And I think you also have to be able to have the tools. Programmatic is something that I think scares television people because they think that it's synonymous with kind of real-time bidding. And the truth is it's not. I don't actually see television moving into a real-time bidding function, but I do see it moving into a programmatic function where you're basically creating tools to automate and making it as easy to buy YouTube to buy premium video content that's from television, that's produced in a high quality way. And I think that's ultimately the tools that will help enable these tests, these trials, to go faster and quicker.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that maybe can give people confidence on where trials can go, if we went back 6 years and you looked at the retail pet category in the United States, you would have Petco and PetSmart running pretty consistently at about $100 million of national TV spend each. And then you wouldn't have anybody over the 5 million level. So I mean, it really was just those two. But there was a company that was just under the $5 million level 6 years ago, and that was a company called Chewy.com.
Yes.
And Chewy.com 6 years ago was about the 2 or 3 million level. That was their second or third year testing a little bit of direct response TV, getting in cheap. Doesn't, you get what you get, you don't get upset, but it worked. And then they went 5 years ago to 10 million. And that really worked. And last year, these won't be exact, but they're pretty close. Petco spent about 110 million on TV advertising. PetSmart spent 120 on national TV, and Chewy spent 130. Right. And what's amazing is the amount of effective reach on a weekly basis that Chewy gets is 2x what Petco gets, because Petco buys it badly. So Chewy not only came in and made TV work, but they started paying premium. They started deciding which networks they wanted to own, really hold some positions to get their reach. Then they used a lot of tools and technology to extend that, and they started doing it smart. And what's interesting is, in case anyone hasn't tracked what happened to that company, because of what TV did, a French-based private equity firm bought them for $3.5 billion 3 years ago because they owned PetSmart, and they saw when TV ads were running high for Chewy, PetSmart sales went down.
Exactly.
So they bought it for $3.3 billion, and they just listed it on an IPO because they realized the idea of bringing old PetSmart together with Chewy, that was just oil and water, that didn't work. They listed it publicly, I think now 3.5 weeks ago, for $13 billion. And they're the first to say, Raymond Svider, the chairman, TV advertising built that business, 100%.
Right. And by the way, when they started that journey, they had 300 million in sales. They now have 2.6 billion in sales. They know my dog's first names.
Right.
They send them birthday cards.
What are they?
Arthur and James, and they know their birthdays. And they get from the founders of the company Christmas cards.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're hyper-aggressive chewers. And so they go through even their most bulletproof toys, and they send us new ones, and they send us a new bag of food for the inconvenience. To your point, though, they built that business on the backs of, essentially, advanced TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to my point earlier, and I think we're here, right? Like you are the living use case, if you will, on what audience-based campaigns could look like, right? We've moved beyond just an index of age and gender to being able to target and guarantee those audiences based on being in the pet care industry or having a pet. And I think on the ROI point, and one thing that Simon's done really well at is we're seeing direct-to-consumer brands on the market all the time. Now, we talked about on an earlier panel how cool and fresh these D2C brands are, but what's really cool and fresh about them is that they have the direct relationship with their consumer, right? And so that, I see that being even more important specifically from a publisher standpoint and across the ecosystem as we have CCPA coming, right? Like you have to get that consumer consent. You have to have that direct relationship with the consumer in order to be able to target them as granularly as you can on digital.
Yeah.
Sean, you brought up Wayfair.
Yeah.
And going back 4 years ago, working with our Scripps client in HDTV, and they said, we got this really smart client up in Boston. They want us to try to ask some questions about analysis and mine your set-top box data. So certainly we kind of like split off part of our part of our data. Back to that thing of just impression-based, you buy it, or a kind of a proof report, a proof of performance. But another end of our business is I can't just give out set-top box data, but you can ask questions, right? And we can run analysis for you. And that's become a major part of our business. And the Wayfair guys ask like a shitload of really good questions 4 years ago, and to the point where, you know, that where they are today, and part of that success was like they asked really good questions of like, you know, questions no one asked before.
Do you think that this is probably for all of you, maybe one of the most effective ways to essentially, if you got a client who's on the fence and you've got the technology, it is essentially successful client testimonials. If we're in that elevator again and the phone rings and it happens to be one of your top clients and you've got your friend and she's on the fence a little bit and you hand the phone and they ask, why ultimately should I do this? What would that experienced client say?
I think the kind of, we need to all be kind of secretive, like find the secret sauce and not share it with our, potential competitors and get it out there. I think that's gonna go away for sure.
Yeah.
The idea really is if I do have great first-party data, how do I bring it into a platform in a scalable way? And then kind of that's my advantage, really. That's what I'm really gonna be able to do. And then no one else will be able to do it with my data, but they'll be able to do it with theirs, and everyone will have the ability to customize. So bring your own data is going to be a term I think we're gonna hear a lot of kind of marketers talk about in the coming years.
And that was the philosophy on which OpenAP was founded, right? So you're the Canoe, we're open, right? So we are an open platform. So if I'm an advertiser, I can bring that first-party data. We have partnerships with third-party data providers. We'll fuse that, match it with viewership data. But even if you don't have that first-party data, you might hypothetically know the characteristics that you have of an audience. We can go in and help you build that. We'll build it for you once, and then you can activate that across publishers.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that moves the markets here, and the nice thing is that there tends to be a lot of word of mouth among the industry. Mm-hmm. And so particularly in the direct-to-consumer space, they all talk to each other. In fact, they've all worked together. Like you can trace them all back to those that worked at Blue Nile or Warby Parker, and that's like they've like all populated the ecosystem. But I think one of the most important things to break in with the advertisers with advanced techniques are to find a really specific problem that can be solved uniquely, and you go solve something that's big. We do a lot of work with Taco Bell, and Taco Bell has a real problem. As you know, they love television, but they have a young male target. And the young male target is very hard to get in concentration without paying a massive amount of money because they tend to be in just a few spots that would otherwise be, Adult Swim and some sports. The advantage of advanced advertising and being able to find basically needles in a haystack and aggregate them by the ton is you find them across 120 different national networks and spots that no one would expect. So for us, we guarantee 18 to 24. Guarantee. Not even one, if we're 1% under, we're screwed and we don't get a renewal. And so they know that right now TV networks won't even guarantee them 18 to 34. And so sometimes advanced advertising is live in the demo, to stay in, as you say, Chris, and I'm like, great, you want to be guaranteed 18 to 24? I'm going to guarantee it.
And it's the advanced data and it's the census data that will find them in the right place. And because here's the fact.
They're on TV.
Oh yeah, this is the thing. So one of the advertisers we got to work with was Touch of Modern. Touch of Modern is a millennial male shopping site started by a fascinating guy by the name of Jerry Hung, okay? And the long story short is like they all did, he was told two things. First, men don't shop, so your whole premise is bad.
Wrong.
And then he had his chief.
I have my Mack Weldon underwear on that I bought.
Yeah. My favorite thing that they make is the cufflinks with the flames. I don't buy them, but they're functional. Apparently they work. So first, men don't shop. Second, don't even bother with TV. He, quote unquote, to your point, tested. He tested TV. His business exploded. It was the most important thing that he did. So apparently, not only do young men shop, but apparently there's millions upon millions upon millions of them that aren't being accurately counted inside of this entire ecosystem. And he should know because he built. He went from an answer to a trivia question to a $500 million business in 3 years. So it's there. All right. Last thing. Now I'm in the
Is
business.
the elevator going down yet? Or
No, you know, we're actually, we're moving out towards the conference floor, okay? And we're going to meet someone, the two of us. Actually, our friend in marketing has gone off, and they're going to go talk to their agency, and together they're going to quickly turn around and send you each a budget, all right? So that went very well. But now they're going to meet someone who grants wishes. You're each going to meet someone who grants wishes on the conference floor, probably for a trade for the time you spent in the elevator. All right, you get to change, Brittany, anything about the current video ecosystem. It could be measurement, it could be, but here's the thing, wide open. I want you each to pick at least one thing that you would change right now that would materially make things better for marketers. Go.
It would be measurement. If I'm going to show ROI, if I'm going to show direct business correlation, we need to get smarter with the way in which we're measuring.
Break that down a little bit more. What do you need in measurement? What?
Yep.
Not just, okay, I want to fix measurement.
Yeah,
What do you need?
I think cross-platform. We've been talking about cross-platform. We've been saying that it's here, the promise is here. It's not. And I can say that even though I was previously at ComScore. We have a lot of progress to make across the industry.
So
the
you
reach and
want,
frequency.
Right,
you want
right.
real census level,
Right.
unduplicated reach,
Yes.
cross-platform. Okay.
I want it all.
So you're going to get that fixed. Chris?
Yes.
I want the 13 million VOD households in Latin America to be all wired up and have every LAMAC client offering dynamic ad insertion on VOD so that many people in this room can take advantage of it.
It's going to be a hard answer to beat, Patrick. You get any wish granted that you could do, and you came in a really interesting place talking about your digital background now in TV. Maybe you want to go there and say, you know, from your experience, but you can fix anything, fix it.
Wow, way to lead my answer, huh?
Yeah.
No, actually, it's a great point. For me, it's the buying experience is really important here. I think right now it's a really tough job buying television. It's very hard, and I feel for the people who are in the kind of the nitty gritty of it. And it really should just be simple. I mean, you should see how it is to buy digital. I mean, some of these guys just buy it through YouTube and Facebook and then just spend the rest of the day on YouTube and Facebook watching videos, you know? It's that easy. And so buying television or buying cross device and kind of cross channels, so whether it's television, where it's digital video, whether it's OTT, whether it's connected TV, anything should just be a simplified one-stop shop buying experience, and it should just have that ability to give you wherever you need to find those audiences in a non-duplicated way.
And I'm going to go to Dave in a minute, but that inspired me to tell you what mine would be, and it's very similar to yours. What I want clients to be able to do, and they could be in the Fortune 500, or they could have 4 pizzerias. Doesn't matter to me. I want them to be able to download an app, and then on that, I want them through elections and toggles and inputs to be able what I call fly the plane, which means I want them to be able to build through an app an advertising schedule. I want pipelines to all of your companies. I want them connected in real time to people who are going to produce professional video for them. I want them connected to strategists. Getting rid of the friction to become an effective television advertiser and take advantage of that scale is what my wish is. Now, Dave is going to get the last word, which may be dangerous, but it's an honor. So, last word of the panel. Your wish is going to be granted. What do you want?
I want to fix agency compensation
Oh, that a boy.
because
All right, we're done.
Time for cocktails, ladies and gentlemen.
we're all dependent on this extraordinary, huge class of professionals who have had every little bit of blood, sweat, and tears squeezed out of them, and they're getting paid less and less and less. And they're getting paid less and less with misaligned incentives. And to the point, you use the word effectiveness. They're actually not getting paid on effectiveness. They're getting paid on efficiency. Yeah. They're getting paid on taking out costs for irrational reasons. We need to find a way that we can rejuvenate the agencies and align the incentives to growth and client growth. And I think it's a real problem. I think it is the biggest thing holding back the industry. I think it is one of the reasons why I see real optimism around these emergent direct-to-consumer brands, because they are focused on growth. They're not focused on cost and efficiency. They line it up all the way up and down. And I think that if we can solve that, we can, all the friction goes out.
Great. I'm actually going to take the last two words, which are thank you. All of you. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.